go into lockdown and practice lockdown maybe for months and years until we have come out of this corona. So corona in a nutshell is here to stay. But there's nothing to panic, and we cannot deny its problems as well, at least till the time when we get a vaccine or a treatment, which is expected maybe somewhere next year. Moreover, corona can come again. You can see in Wuhan, the cases are again coming up. So the hard fact is, this is there, this will come, we have to live with it, and it will have an impact on the health system, broader society, and we are concerned with the clinical trials and trial participants. Yes, it will have an impact. What we need is to adapt with the changing environment and to guide quality research outcome in a time-bound manner. Next slide, please. So whatever strategies we adopt and whatever alternatives we come out with, we know COVID-19 is a disease of contact. Yes, and of course, droplet infection, like Dr. Power said, and that is why social distancing has come to 6 feet in exchange of 3 feet. So whatever changes we adopt, we have to keep in back of the mind that we have to follow social distancing while we come out with changes. Next slide, please. COVID-19 definitely has come up with lots of changes. Now, and all these changes will actually force us to go into work modes which are remote and virtual. If you look at the participants, trial participants, the patients, they are confined. So, and this is definitely posing difficulty on the part of the investigators to maintain their medical oversight. Then we have limited access to public places, including hospitals, because of the fear of infection. People don't want to go. To get trial patients will be a problem. So there's a limited access. So this is a challenge. Then we also know, like Dr. Power said, that they are actually very busy handling the critical care patients, of course, suffering from COVID-19. So when we make plans, we also have to keep in mind that whatever we are trying to start or give to a principal or investigator, what is the burden on him and how much will he do justice, will be able to do justice to the study which you have given to him. And the last one is restricted availability. I'm not talking of non-availability. I'm talking of restricted availability. Means we have people, they're on board, but we don't have them to send them to do the routine trial related work in person. So keeping this in mind, let's think of what are the changes we can come to while handling the clinical trials in this scenario. Next slide, please. So what should be the approach? Definitely it has to be pragmatic, which is realistic and harmonized. We have to have procedures which are flexible. We cannot be rigid that something has to be done means has to be done. No, we have to find out ways what suits best, definitely without compromising with the integrity of the trials, without compromising with the right safety, well-being of the trial participants. That means we have to come out with novel methodologies, innovative methods, effective management and limitations of time, and effective use of infrastructure and resources. Next slide, please. So that means we are now going to become dependent more on digital solutions and new technologies, which we expect will be coming very soon. What needs to keep in mind is we have to use them professionally. We can use pre-recorded investigator meetings. We can have study portals providing hub for communications and online training. We can have remote visits. And with all this, we can reduce our travel need, and travel need has to be reduced. I just went through some of the guidelines of post like a lockdown 4.0. And when I look at the prices which has come up for the air tickets, it's exorbitant. If you to give you some right knowledge, it is from Delhi, Mumbai, single way ticket is 25,000. Train second class is 10,000 one way. So you tell me, and Noida airport is 10,000. So it is not actually, it will not be feasible and practical now to travel and then try to manage our studies. So, and secondly, when we use digital solutions, you know, there is a very serious privacy and security threat. So we have to definitely take that also into, we have to consider that when we use these digital solutions. Next slide, please. So we are into work from home culture, basically, yes. And if you look at the slide, it has some advantages and some disadvantages also. Advantages, yes, you can sit at any point of time. You don't need, no need to dress up. You don't need to spend time on the road. You don't have to brave the traffic. Disadvantage, you don't see the faces actually in real of your friends and your participants, right? But nevertheless, situation is there, so we have to go by it. So see what this man is wearing. He is in a Bermuda, but on the top he's wearing a shirt and the coat. So this is an advantage which you have when you work from home. So coming to the next slide, please. Now, which are the areas which needs management? Yes, let me talk about the ongoing clinical trials, non-COVID clinical trials. So there will be sites which are during this time will be having some opening, have to open some new trial sites, or have to have recruit some patients, or may need some personal participation of manpower in the trial. Next slide, please. So whatever you do, it is actually the job of the sponsors. Yes, it's a big, big work on the sponsors and the investigators as well. The sponsors have to actually, in their risk management, consider whether the measures they adopt actually are fitting into the scenario in which we are all crossing through. The changes have to be well balanced and proportionate. Definitely prioritization should be given to the well-being and the safety and the right of the participants who are into the trial, without putting more pressure on the investigators who are already burdened with the ongoing pandemic. Next slide, please. So measures, whatever taken, have to be agreed upon with the investigators, and many times also with the participants wherever they are concerned. Now, if you look at the visits, you can postpone them, you can complete them, or you can completely cancel them, or you can actually go on only when it is strictly necessary. Physical visits have to be converted into virtual visits. Recruitment, you have to interrupt or you have to slow down after critically assessing the feasibility of including new trial participants in the ongoing trial. Next slide, please. If you look at the trials, yes, temporarily you can halt the trial at some of the trials or all trial sites. But let us remember that while halting temporarily, even if it is temporary, it can potentially compromise the overall well-being and the interest of the trial participants. So investigator along with the sponsor has to take a call when they want to halt a trial, any trial temporarily. You can extend the duration of the trial. So timelines will get extended. You can also postpone the trials to a later date. That will also extend your timelines. But I told you in the beginning that we have to be flexible, at least till the time the crisis is flattened. Now, if you go to the sites, yes, you can deactivate the sites which have not yet started. You can close the sites if it is not feasible without compromising the rights and safety and well-being of the trial participants, and of course the validity of the data which you get through the study. Transfer of trial participants to the investigational sites. Yes, you can look into it. You can transfer the trials to a site away from the risk zone or closer to the home. But in this case, you have to first talk to the participant whether he or she is agreeing with it. Secondly, you have to have an agreement with the other trial, other site, whether they have enough infrastructure to handle the participant, and also have the necessary ways and means to by which they can collect the data from the site which was originally working on the trial. And then also there should be provisions in the ECRF whether fresh changes can be made into the new trial. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, if there is an initiation of new trial sites, which is generally now not expected in the current situation, but there may be some urgent need to open a new trial. Suppose there is a need for some critical data, and just because of some data, the trial is not being able to get completed. So on an urgent need, they can be opened up and implemented also without the information to the regulatory as an urgent safety measure. And later on, as a substantial amendment to the protocol, you can seek for the approval and initiation of this additional site. Impact on trial participants, yes, when you do changes, you shift the patient from one site to another, there will be some impact, there will be some logistic issues, and so the sponsor has to take care of this. For example, the transportation, he has to take care of the transportation of such patients when they are shifted. Next slide, please. Now, in an ongoing trial, there will be definitely some critical laboratory tests, imaging, and other diagnostic tests, which are required for patient safety. And since the patient is not able to come to the site, it is not being done. So what can be done? It can be done locally at sites which have the respective authorization and certification. Definitely, when you do this, the sponsor has to be in the loop. He should be informed. Similarly, if there is a biological samples and it's the end study and you are not able to ship the samples to the central laboratory, that also can be done locally and reported in the clinical study report with the detailed justifications for doing so. The normal ranges and certifications have to be shared by the sponsor so that he can use it during evaluation of the results. Next slide, please. Investigator can initiate changes at the sites, discussing with the sponsor. When this happens, when the trials the investigator is on is handling some life-threatening or disease or some severely debilitating conditions where the trial participants need to stay in the trial treatment. We can initiate in such situations, and of course, he has to inform, discuss with the sponsor before doing so. And situations where the current principal investigator definitely can be busy, indisposed, so he can delegate temporarily his work to his subordinate, like the sub-investigator. However, when you are changing a PI permanently, the regulatory authority and the ethics committee should be in the loop. Next slide, please. While making any changes in the protocol, it has to be fully documented with the rationale as to how they will ensure trial participants' safety, integrity, and protection of the personal data. Sponsor also has to assess the impact of the protocol changes on the clinical data interpretability and definitely has to discuss with the regulatory authority with the final data, what they get definitely, and should have a scientific basis while discussing. No enrollment should be done without prior eligibility assessment. And time has come where they also have to consider whether before enrollment, COVID-19 test is to be done, not done. Definitely the PI has to take a call on that. Next slide, please. Now coming to initiation of new trials. Yes, it has to be done with the agreement between the sponsor and the investigator. But before that, they have to critically assess the feasibility and whether it is really required at this point of time. Definitely national and state recommendations also has to be taken into account. Please note the regulatory authority statements comes next after the national and state recommendations. So now whatever the CDSCO will recommend, it will be based on the national recommendations. Of course, in the benefit risk section of the protocol, there has to be an address on the additional risk which the participants will come across because of the participation during the pandemic. And it also should therefore have the risk along with the mitigation measures, if they have so. Next slide. Safety reporting. As such, regulatory already was into e-governance of safety reporting, although it is still working on it. We are not foolproof ready with it, but we had already started reporting safety events through emails, right? And so it should not have much of an effect. So sponsors have to continue, and the PIs also have to continue reporting SAE adhering to the central regulatory framework. Investigators definitely have to collect adverse events from the trial participants through alternate means, which they are already doing so if the patient is not in front of them, maybe through emails or phone. Next slide, please. Now, risk assessment, a very important integral part of CT management changes. So because of the challenges posed by COVID-19, decisions have to adjust the clinical trial conduct has to be based on risk management. Now, who does the risk management? The sponsors, the investigators. So sponsor does of every ongoing trial, prioritizing the critical tasks involved in the clinical trial. Investigator does of every trial individual participant. Here's a difference. Sponsor of the whole trial, ongoing trial, the investigator of the individual participant. And whatever you do, have to have a documentation on an ongoing basis. Next slide. So now the changes which are happening, they are happening in every day. Okay, that means we are in a dynamic situation. So whatever regulations, whatever changes we accept to do or we agree to do may change with the next day. So there is also a chance of risk reassessment because of the scenario. It can be sponsor driven, it can be investigator driven. If you talk of sponsor driven reassessment, it should also be documented at the sponsor trial master file. If it is investigator driven, it has to be in investigator site master file, and whatever the investigator does have to be communicated to the sponsor. Whenever you decide to initiate a trial or to continue the clinical trial which is ongoing, please remember that you are putting your trial patients into risk and consider that part while doing so. And definitely the patients might be on certain treatments which again predispose them to the infection of COVID-19. So that also has to be taken into consideration and very much included into their consent process. So maybe you have to take a re-consent when you are doing trials here which are continuing or whenever you start a new trial. Next slide, please. So now communication with the authorities is very important. As far as you all are concerned, it is the authority which is the CDSU, and of course having the full knowledge of what the government is saying to and how to work, the state and the government is trying to communicate us at this point of time. Definitely the government will give priority to the studies which are based on based for prevention or treatment of COVID-19 infection. So a big scope, as already discussed with Dr. Panwar, India has a big scope of getting into trials. And for your information, there are 3 protocols on COVID-19 infection, which I'm already working on. So which already is giving a feeling that yes, henceforth we will have trials being conducted in India, trying to find out some treatment for this infection. Now, so, and then in this scenario, we will also be facing substantial amendments, which we need to do in the application. And these substantial amendments have to be conveyed to the regulatory authorities. For ongoing trials, suppose a company has, say about 10 trials, and in all those 10 trials, because of the COVID, he is making some substantial changes. So in one application, he can just mention all those trials and all those changes and submit to the regulatory. And similarly, for urgent safety measures also, you can do the same. You don't need to give one application for one case. Next slide, please. So sponsor, now who considers whether an amendment is substantial or not? It is the sponsor, yes? So what is this, how do you define substantial amendment? Anything which actually compromises safety or physical or mental integrity of the clinical trial participant and the scientific value of the trial. Anything interfering with these 2 aspects becomes substantial, and it has to be communicated to the regulatory authority, and it's obligatory. That means it is mandatory. Next slide, please. So we we need to take into account the limited capacity of the regulatory authorities and the ethics committee at this point of time. So there is no point communicating everything to them. The only thing which you need to communicate is when any urgent actions are required by the sponsor and the investigator to protect the trial participants against immediate hazard. You do it first and then you communicate later on. But at the first possible opportunity, you need to communicate to them, giving the cause and what measures you have taken to control that or to mitigate that, and what is your further plan of action regarding this safety measure. Next slide, please. So they are burdened, ethics committee, regulatory authority, they are burdened. So please do not over-report. Over-reporting should be avoided. Sponsors to submit only high quality, complete applications. Here I'm mentioning complete applications containing only necessary changes, because neither we have space, neither we have manpower, neither we have time to go through all these things at the time when we are already burdened with the pandemic work. Protocol deviations bound to happen. We cannot avoid, bound to happen. But if your protocol deviations are happening, please, you need to submit and record. If you are interfering with inclusion exclusion criteria, you have to take permission. If it is some logistic issues like we already had before, then you can take, you can make the changes and then intimate. And then all the list of protocol changes with appropriate risk assessment and justification and follow-up action has to be submitted when you submit to the regulatory authority. And also keep the records in your trial master file. Next slide, please. Now, you make changes, but the sponsor cannot do it on its own. It has to take consensus of the investigator and the participants wherever necessary. So agreement with the and communication with the sponsor, the trial sites, the trial participants. When I talk of trial participants, I also mean the investigators. So there has to be an agreement when you make changes. They have to be comfortable in doing so. So whatever changes initiated by the sponsor have to be agreed with and communicated clearly to the investigators. Definitely the investigators have to be documented through email exchanges, because you cannot meet them face to face, at least 15 days from now, or maybe a month. You never know in which way this disease will go, because expected is around 3 crore by August. So situation will be worse. So we have to gear up to use all these electronic devices, and have to have proof through email exchanges or whatever remotely. Now you have to also support the site so that they can implement these changes. And for that, you please give them a summary of the changes you have made, or you give the change documents with track changes so they really know what changes have come across. Investigators can make changes to the trial conduct as an urgent safety measure and then report later as a substantial amendment. Trial participants should be informed if it is concerned with them, like you shift a trial participant from one center to other center, it is relevant to him. So he should know, he or she should know. So these are the situations where the trial participant also should be informed in a timely manner. Next slide, please. So, okay. Now coming to the changes in informed consent. So definitely you are changing an informed consent procedure. You have to do it because certain changes, you have to tell them about the risk they are into. You also have to tell them, ask their interest if you are really, you want to participate in the trial at this point of time. So there have to be changes and they have to go through ethics committee and the regulatory. Exception only in urgent safety measure, which I'm telling again and again. Anything compromising with the safety of the individual or data integrity can be started and later on taken as an amendment with the regulatory authority. In case a sponsor plans to initiate a trial aiming to test new treatment for COVID-19. So here comes a change in the procedure. One takes an informed consent. So that you have to share and discuss it out with the regulatory authority about the alternate procedures which you are thinking to start with. And the most, next slide, please. Yeah. Now, what can you do when you take in COVID-19 infected patients? So because they are confined, you cannot actually, physical isolation is there, so you cannot take a written consent. And in that case, oral consent has to be taken. This you please have to inbuilt in your protocol so that problems don't arise. That how will you take an informed consent when you're doing a trial using clinical COVID-19 patients. Yeah, and this has to be done when you take an oral consent. It has to be done in front of an impartial witness, sign and date the informed consent form, and investigator has to record how the impartial witness was selected. You can also use two consent forms, one for the impartial witness and one for the subject. And that also can be taken, but the relevant records have to be there in the investigator site master file. Then later on, a correctly signed, dated, when the patient recovers from the infection, that time you have to take a correctly signed, dated, informed consent and then submit it to the regulatory authorities. Next slide, please. Why there is a, yeah, there is some window which is coming. Please move this window away. 1 minute. Why it is coming? Just move it. Yeah. So where COVID-19 trial patients are incapacitated, adults are not able to give informed consent at all or is a minor, then you can rope in legal representatives according to the national guidelines. Plus, please, you have to discuss with the regulatory authority. In your protocol, make a provision of it so you discuss it in one go. In case of acute life-threatening situations where it is not possible to take any consent within the therapeutic window or to obtain a prior informed consent from the trial participant or his legal representative, you can go forward doing the trial without taking any consent, and later on you can actually may do the needful, but you have to record the rationale for not obtaining consent from the trial participant prior to enrollment into the study. Next slide, please. So there also, like I told you, that some of your trials are, patients are already into the trial, some are ongoing trials, and you, during that time when you enrolled them, you actually did not have an infection pandemic. So that COVID-19 factor was not factored into your consent process. So definitely you have to do a reconsent of these participants. But for reconsent, if you ask that, should they come to the trial sites, the answer is no, you don't need. Only for a reconsent, the patient need not come. You can do through alternative methods, but please keep a record of it through emails or validated secure electronic system, which you are already using in the trial for taking reconsent in such situations. Next slide, please. Approved, updated. So when you are taking reconsent, definitely you have to give the patient information sheet to them. They have to go through why you are asking for reconsent and which are the areas which have changed. So please provide them through email, through courier, okay? And then you take the consent through emails or couriers or any other digital media. But what you need to do is you have to document this taking consent by this way. And it has to be then later on confirmed by the normal consent procedure at the earliest opportunity when system improves. Next slide, please. So changes in the distribution of the investigational medicinal products, very, very important because of the present scenario of traveling. Everything has come to a standstill with high cost. So we have to have some changes in the distribution to prevent the avoidable visits to the sites. Now, sponsor actually has to assess the risks related to the product, which they have to distribute, and then think of alternate ways of shipping and storage arrangements. Objective of making changes in distribution of the IP or non-IP are only two. One is that there should not be any interruption in the treatment for the patient, and he or she should be able to take the drug as per the protocol. And the investigator definitely has to supervise the continuation of the treatment. Next slide, please. Now, sponsors actually have to, what changes can you make in the distribution? So let us see. Now, first and foremost, sponsors has to assess whether the sites can handle these large amount of material when you are going to distribute them in large amounts, because you want to keep them as a backup so that your trial participant can be provided with to avoid critical clinical visits. So appropriate stock should be there. So you have to talk to your trial sites, and they have to maintain the in case of distribution failure, they have to give it to the sites. Then redistribution, and when a site, suppose in a site there is some deficiency of the IMPs, then you can distribute them from one site to other, and in the process, definitely you have to follow the GMP. Next slide, please. While distributing these drugs to the different sites, nothing can be done without a written procedure in place, and definitely in cooperation with the qualified person or the person responsible for distribution of the IMP. Sites should have enough information to ensure that the process can be performed securely. During transfer, the records should be retained, should be there and should be retained. Documentation to be included in the investigator and the sponsor trial master file of this exchange. Next slide, please. Delivery is covering up. Delivery of the IMPs directly to the trial participants' home during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so this can be the scenario. So what we should do when such scenario comes, because there is of course a reduction in the physical site visits. So what we need to take care of when we are directly giving to the trial participants or the caregivers to their residences. First and foremost, the investigator has to explain the process to the participant or the caregiver in detail and take an oral consent before even communicating with the sponsor. And all this oral consent has to be confirmed in writing or through emails or via courier. Now, this consent has to be documented, the record has to be preserved, and definitely before agreeing with the sponsor, you have to take a consent from the person to whom you are going to send the drug. Investigator has to provide the trial participants details like your name, address, contact details to the distributor. Distributor to use this information for the purpose of making deliveries during the period of pandemic and not to use this information for any other work. Next slide. So he has to actually destroy all the documents when the necessary deliveries have been made. The details or the data can only be used by the monitors, auditors, inspectors, verifying the conduct of the trial. Nobody else. No contact between the sponsor and the distributor is very important. There should not be any contract between the, a contract between the sponsor and the distributor, but no details should be provided regarding the patient's details to the sponsor. He should not know which patient has got how many and where is the address and where is the contact detail. Distributor should have access to the trial part. No, distributor should not have any access to the trial patient's health information, and he should give enough importance and take care of the blinding and the randomization. Next slide, please. Dedicated couriers to be contracted for IMP shipment with procedures in place. Procedures definitely have to ensure timely delivery. It is not that you give the product today and then he takes his own time to deliver the product. So it has to, we have to see that it is delivered on time. Investigators should receive a confirmation once the drug is received by the patient or the caregiver through phone call or email. Investigator is also responsible for proper IMP administration. That means he has to be in contact with the trial participant and see that the trial participant is taking the drug properly. Shipment, while the drugs are being sent, the integrity of the IMP has to be maintained, and this is particularly important for drugs which go by cold chain. Even the physical condition has to be taken care of. Next slide, please. Now, a separate courier can also be contacted, and they have to be committed to take the product, maintaining all the required features, especially the temperature. There has to be an accountability of the IMPs. The patients will be taking the IMPs, but they have to be accountable, keep an accountability of how many drugs they have kept. The empty sachets or the bottles have to be kept and have to be given. And they also have to have systems in their residences in place to see that the temperature at which they are keeping the drugs are as per the requirement. And the documentation of the receipt of the trial participant also should be kept. Participants should, this I've already told, unused IMPs and containers should be returned to the investigator once they meet. Now, changes in IMP distribution, especially when the visit schedule as per protocol is not being happening, or we are not able to undergo the scheduled visits, physical visits, it is bound to have some additional changes, and these should be communicated to the regulatory bodies. Next slide, please. Coming to changes in monitoring. So most of your monitoring and QA activities have to be reassessed, and temporarily alternative proportionate mechanisms of oversight will be required. So when we talk, of oversight, virtual oversight, we have to take into consideration the safety and well-being of the patients. And it has to have a risk-based approach to the monitoring. Focus should be, at the time of crisis, the focus definitely has to be in certain sites, not all sites, maybe certain sites, certain data points, certain processes, which are actually crucial to ensure the right safety, well-being, and the integrity of the data. Next slide, please. Sponsors should determine the extent and nature of monitoring, like how much monitoring it is to be done, which are the sites which are to be monitored, what is the procedure of monitoring. That would be eligible for each, and so every specific trial will have a different nature and extent. In this exceptional situation, we are actually where we are constrained. A monitoring plan has to be in place, it has to be revised, and there of course has to be a balance between the oversight and the capacity of the acceptable balance between appropriate oversight and capacity of the trial site. Next slide. Now, results of adjusted monitoring and their impact has to be reported to the sponsor in their reports, monitoring reports and clinical study report. And the moment we come out of this crisis, we should have a proper follow-up in place so that immediately we can jack up some steps like increase in site monitoring and try to rectify or resolve the issues which happened because of reduced monitoring. And definitely on the sites which where SDV has been done, because when we do SDV, and especially when they are pseudonymized documents, they cannot be considered as source documents, and remoting monitoring is expected to in SDVs are only done in most critical cases. So the sites which have undergone SDVs, they also have to have a repeat on-site monitoring once the crisis cools down. So next slide, please. So what are the different ways in which you can monitor as of now? Yes, on-site monitoring you can do, but very selective based on the need and only critical cases, critical sites, critical issues, which has to go in for on-site monitoring visits. Centralized monitoring, you are already doing it. Many sites are doing it, and for saving cost, but now it has become a reality. So central review of the data which is collected. When we talk of off-site monitoring is through video conferencing, so through emails or through any other means by which you can actually have a virtual monitoring with the site, with the investigators and the participants in the site, and SDVs, which are done only in emergency situations. Next slide, please. So when we talk of on-site monitoring visits, I told you first and foremost is please, we have to look into what is crucial and what is important. We have to strike a balance between the need and the load the investigators are undergoing, the sites are undergoing. So depending on that, we can cancel or postpone. We can extend the period between the monitoring visits. We can, on-site monitoring, we will do only when it is feasible, and definitely we should take into account the national and the local and the organizational social distancing restrictions and the urgency. Limited targeted on-site monitoring as of now will only be allowed and will be feasible also. Next slide, please. Centralized, we know we are already into it. So centralized monitoring will include electronic data capture system, be it ECRA, central laboratory, ECG, imaging, everything through an electronic data system. You can use them, they are already in place, and temporarily replace, you can replace your on-site monitoring. And companies who are already doing electronic data capture using that system, they do have less number of on-site monitoring. Off-site, as I already told, it can be through phone calls, videos, emails, and other online tools in order to discuss the trial with the investigator and site staff. Next slide, please. Remote source data verification done only in emergency services, emergency cases. So only on very few trials when in line with national law and temporary national emergency measures. So when we have to do some data cleaning, especially in this situation when you in person you're not able to do. So the data cleaning steps before database lock in pivotal trials, investigating serious life-threatening conditions for which we do not have a satisfactory treatment option. So this actually fits into the trials wherein we'll be testing COVID patients for the treatments and prevention. So when we do that, definitely focus will be on the quality control of the critical data, like your primary efficacy, important safety data, and important efficacy data. So that is the reason in my previous slide, I told you that the sites which are undergoing SDVs, they have to have on-site monitoring the moment the things normalizes. Next slide, please. Principal, who will determine which site can go in for SDVs? The principal investigator is the person. He should know that to have a site, to do the SDVs for a site, the site should be able to give pseudonymized copies of the trial-related source documents with the monitor electronically, and then the site should be able to have access to the electronic medical records with the trial participants, and then video review of the medical records with clinical site teamwork without sending any copy to the monitor. So this is confidential. So you can have a view, you can have a meeting, you can discuss, but these copies, the medical records, you cannot be sharing with the monitor when you do it for SDVs. Next slide, please. Now changes to auditing. As of now, auditing comes to a full stop. It has to be avoided or postponed. Yes, auditing can only be conducted if permitted by the national regulatory or the local or organizational social distancing restrictions. For critical trials, on-site audits as well as remote audits can be considered after agreement with the investigator, and if the audits are assessed as essential, which implies that anything which is essential can only be audited. So as of now, we have to put a stop to the audit. Next slide, please. Protocol deviations, as I told you earlier also, is normal. It will happen. So you have to manage the protocol deviations. So who manages? It has to manage following standard procedures, Periodically, sponsors should perform an analysis of the number and type of deviations to assess whether a protocol amendment or other notifications are actually needed. GCP inspectors, when they go, they also have to have some proportionate approach, because deviations are ought to happen. So they have to be a little flexible and take care of the trials. As long as participant safety and trial integrity is not compromised, they can come to a consensus with the participating site. Such deviation definitely has to be assessed and reported in the clinical study report. Next slide, please. So now regarding the expenses, things have changed. So many changes are coming into, and more will come into as and when. It's a dynamic scenario. With time, as and on, you will start doing work, you will see so many expenses, additional expenses will come, which will be unplanned. So you have to have provisions for them. So to have provisions means please revisit your insurance policy terms, because you need to cover some additional changes. For example, your COVID tests, you might be needing in between, so they have to be covered. Now, who are bearing the sponsor, the expenses? The sponsor. Most of the situations, the sponsor has to pay. And if the sponsor immediately is not able to pay, then the participant or the investigator pays, but the sponsor later on compensates for it. If any additional financial compensation is provided to the site or the investigator to cover the cost of couriers or IMP delivery, this needs to be documented. Next slide, please. So take home. So a lot of things. So what the main aim is, we need to adapt with the changing environment and to guide quality research outcome in a time-bound manner. So with change, we have seen your timelines will go to haywire. So please, when you make the protocols, when you make changes, please keep in mind that I have to have a timeline also. And whatever changes I make, I have to give importance to the quality research. I have to look into the priority, the health and safety of the trial participant. I also have to look into the national and local authorities' contingency provisions. You cannot just keep your eyes closed. Keep the regulatory authority into the loop. Whenever you want to make certain changes which are compromising with the health and safety, you have to take permission from the regulatory. When making protocol, please see you put into all those changes in advance, so that when the protocol is being viewed, many of your queries and your problems which might arise later will be taken care of. If the trial participant is unable to attend to the site, so what we do? We have home nursing, given observing social distancing needs. We contact them by phone, by telemedicine, and maybe this is required for identifying the adverse events and ensure continuous medical care and oversight of the participants. Next slide, please. So the final slide. So Corona is here to stay. We are into a problem, but we are human beings. We definitely can come out with solutions. We have to stay positive. Better days are on their way. Let's enjoy the new life, the e-life. Okay, we cannot be cribbing. So let's embrace it and find out new ways. We have to depend 100% on Wi-Fi. So if your sites are in the remote places, please see that you give them Wi-Fi system with a broadband. Then we have to make friendship with work from home culture, which you are already into it. Alternate arrangements definitely will come with problems and limitations and risks and requirements for data protection. So please, we have to take care of it. Do not forget documentation, whether you are doing the work online or using any other means, do not forget documentation. Next slide. So with this, I complete my presentation. The references are all the guidelines, MHRA, FDA, CDSU, and of course, a few notices from CDSU and national guidelines from ICMR on ethical committee reviewing biomedical health research. You can ask me questions. I just want to make the things a little lighter. Please show me the final slide. So the last slide, yeah. So this is for you. I was just loitering around below my apartment, and suddenly I come across this. Look at the nature. This is the Corona in the wild. And with lot of risk, I have collected this to show you. Thank you very much.